It was a gray, overcast morning, one of those days, where even the sky seems to grieve with you. Where the clouds carry a weight too heavy to name. The kind of morning where silence screams louder than sound. Where the air itself feels like a prayer trapped in your throat. Retired Marine Sergeant Major David Cole stood tall at the head of a polished oak casket draped in an American flag. Unmoving as stone, yet breaking apart inside with every second. Inside that casket lay his only son, Marcus James Cole, 19 years old. A freshman at Howard University. A brilliant mind. A gentle giant with a crooked smile and a heart too big for this world. Just 2 weeks ago, Marcus had been walking home from his night shift at a local community center. Mentoring at Kids Giving, back to a neighborhood where too many never lived long enough to see their dreams. That night, a drunk driver ran a red light and ended it all.
Ow.
No name, no license plate, just headlights and silence. David had served in Fallujah, Helmand Province, Kandahar, 2 years in the United States Marine Corps. 3 combat deployments, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. But nothing in his training could prepare him for this. Nothing in battle had ever hurt like watching his son lowered into the ground. He wore his full-dress blues not out of ceremony, but survival. That uniform was the last thread holding him upright. The weight of grief pressed down on his spine like a mountain. But still he stood. Rows of mourners sat behind him. Family, friends, veterans, professors, kids Marcus had mentored. Even strangers who had only heard the story and felt compelled to come. They all sat in reverent silence as taps began to play from a lone trumpet. The melody soft and sorrowful, floating across the cemetery like a farewell whispered through tears. Each note pierced deeper than any bullet ever had. David didn't cry at first. He couldn't. Marines are taught to hold the line, even when the world crumbles. But as the last note faded into the overcast sky, something in him cracked. His knees gave out. He dropped to the ground beside the casket, one hand clutching the edge of the flag, the other shaking from a pain deeper than flesh. His lips trembled, his jaw clenched. And then he let out a sound that stopped time, a cry so raw, so guttural. It tore through the cemetery like a storm. This wasn't a performance. This wasn't ceremony. This was a father broken open. I should have been there. I should have driven you, he whispered, barely audible, the words collapsing as they left his mouth. I was supposed to keep you safe. Some mourners looked away, unable to bear the sight of such naked pain. Others wept openly. No one spoke. No one moved, because they knew this wasn't just grief. It was sacred. It was sacred the way a battlefield is sacred, the way a father's love is sacred. But 2 blocks away, in a quiet residential neighborhood, a different story was being written to officers on routine patrol, new to the precinct, unfamiliar with the area. Got a call from dispatch. Disturbance reported at Evergreen Cemetery. It's possible aggressive male, causing a scene. No mention of a funeral. No follow-up questions. It's just a vague alert and the coordinates. Within minutes, a black and white squad car rolled slowly up. The narrow paved path between gravestones, tires crunching on gravel. The officers stepped out, hands on their belts, brows furrowed. What they saw wasn't the pain of a grieving father. They didn't see the flag or the medals or the folded hands of mourners. They saw a tall, muscular black man in a dark uniform. Fists clenched, body shaking, shouting at a coffin. They saw a problem, sir. One officer called sharply, hand already resting near his taser. We need you to calm down and step away from the casket. David didn't hear him. He was lost in mourning, whispering to his son, still clutching the wood, still trying to say goodbye. The second officer took a few steps forward, voice louder. Now, sir, step away now. David blinked, startled, as if waking from a dream. His voice came out hoarse, dry from tears and time. I'm burying my son, he said softly. Just give me a moment. But the officer didn't hear what he needed to hear. He moved in, reached for David's arm. Years of combat training kicked in. David flinched, instinctively pulling away not with force, but with the muscle memory of a man trained never to be grabbed without warning. That single motion was enough. The other officer moved without hesitation. The crack of a taser shot through. The air moment of unimaginable cruelty unfolded. 50,000 volts surged into David's back. His body convulsed. His eyes rolled. He collapsed forward into the dirt face first beside the very casket of the child he could not protect. His hands still clutched the flag. For a beat, the world stopped breathing. And then came the screams. "He's a Marine." Someone shouted, "That's his son's funeral, you monsters." Another woman cried out. Phones came out, cameras rolled. Mourners surged forward, unsure whether to help or run or scream. But the damage was done. A decorated veteran had just been tased in front of his son's grave, in full dress blues, by men who didn't ask his name, didn't recognize his rank, didn't see his pain. A little boy standing beside his mother looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why are they hurting the soldier?" His mother had no answer. None of us did. David lay twitching in the dirt, blood mixing with tears, metals scratched and bent, still whispering Marcus's name. The officers rattled, radioed for backup, barking commands no one could hear over the chaos. But it wasn't law enforcement that was needed. It was humanity. It was honor. It was the one thing no badge could restore. Dignity. But help was already coming. Just not the kind they expected. 8 minutes. That's how long it took. 8 minutes. From taser to thunder, a former Marine corporal who had served with David years. Earlier, watching from the back of the funeral, typed a message into a secure veterans-only group chat called Seer Shield. It was created for moments just like this. Not for violence, but for presence. For response, 6 words. Cole tased. Funeral. Cemetery. Need backup. The message flew across phones like a flare in the night, and then engine hum. Tires on gravel. A new sound cut through the cemetery. 3 matte black SUVs pulled in. No sirens, no screeching brakes. Just the calm, purposeful rhythm of men. Who didn't need to announce their authority? Doors opened. 6 men stepped out, all in full Marine Corps dress blues. They moved with quiet precision, not rushed, not panicked. Like they'd rehearsed this 1,000 times. Not because they were sent, but because that's what Marines do. They come, they protect, they remember. Every face in the crowd turned. The mood shifted. The very atmosphere changed. No one spoke. No. One had 2. One of them, Gunnery Sergeant Ramon Blaketall, scarred, silent, walked directly to David's side. He knelt down, placed a steady hand on his shoulder, and whispered, "We've got you. Top. You're not alone." David, still dazed, blinked through the dirt and pain, recognition flickering like dawn across his eyes. He tried to speak, but only a choked sound came out. The other Marines encircled him not like bodyguards, but like brothers reclaiming their own. They lifted him, slowly, carefully. One adjusted his collar, another straightened his ribbons. A third placed his cover gently into his hand, like a crown being returned to its rightful place. Then Staff Sergeant Mason stepped forward. He didn't yell, didn't raise a fist. He simply stood between David and the officers, and with a voice so quiet it rang like thunder, said, "You don't touch a Marine in uniform like that. Not in combat, not in church, not at his son's funeral. Never." One Marine handed the officer a folder. David Cole's service record, 20-2 years. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 3 tours, more commendations than most see in a lifetime. Officer paled. They hadn't just tased a grieving father. They had assaulted a national hero at the worst moment of his life. The crowd, once mourning, now galvanized, stood taller. Veterans saluted. Strangers sobbed. Someone began to chant Marcus's name. Others joined. The Marines helped David walk back to the casket. This time, not alone. He stood before it, battered but upright, and laid his hand on the wood. "I kept my promise, son," he whispered. "They came for you too." The folded flag was handed to him, placed against his chest like a returned heartbeat. Round him, silence swelled into reverence, and then they saluted. 6 Marines. Perfect. Unified. Slow, and the crowd followed. Civilians. Children. Veterans. Black. white, together it was no longer a funeral, it was a reckoning. By the time David was helped to the memorial platform, the rest of America had already begun to stir. News outlets interrupted broadcasts. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Justice for David. Hashtag TASED in uniform. Hashtag 8 minutes later. Veteran organizations released statements. Civil rights groups mobilized. But David didn't rush to a microphone. He took 3 days. Then, stood again in front of cameras at the local Veterans Hall. His voice didn't shake. It boomed. "I wore this uniform to protect my country," he said. "I never thought I'd need protection in it, especially not beside my child's grave." Paused. "I'm not here to shame. I'm here to remind America what this uniform stands for. Sacrifice, honor, brotherhood, and yes, grief. You don't strip a man of his dignity, no matter what you see or don't see on his sleeve." Applause erupted. But he raised a hand and silenced it. "I didn't rise alone. I rose because 6 men remembered me when the world forgot. That's the legacy my son deserves." Letters came from the president, from generals, from mothers and fathers, black and white. A movement began. New legislation was proposed to protect veterans at public events. Law enforcement retraining was ordered. Cemeteries revised officer. Conduct policies. The very cemetery where David fell added a bronze plaque beside Marcus's grave. "In honor of SGT, Major David Cole and Marcus James Cole, may their strength remind us what we stand for." And every year now on the anniversary, Marines gather at that spot not to protest, to remember, to salute, to remind the world that while injustice can strike in seconds, honor rises in silence. David now mentors young men like Marcus, teaching them to stand, to grieve, to fight for justice without losing their soul. And when they ask about that day, he doesn't talk about the taser. He tells them about the 8. About the arrival. About the silence that became thunder. Because in the end, this story didn't end with a fall. It ended with 6 men lifting one broken father into the light. Turning disgrace into dignity, grief into glory, and reminding the world sometimes. All it takes is 8 minutes for the Marines to change everything.